Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to begin my reflection by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam people. I would also like to acknowledge that those not from Vancouver are seeing what the typical days in Vancouver, dark and kind of rainy skies, so kind of get both flavors of the sun and the rain, so I'm glad you can kind of see everything while you're here. Once again, my name is Drake Henry. I come from Burnaby, BC. I was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I am a Métis person. My family's from the Potosh region of Saskatchewan, where our so-called rebellion occurred. I'm also a nursing student at BCIT and a graduate from health sciences from SFU. However, I thought at this conference, I was actually, throughout this conference, I've been re-inspired to apply for the Faculty of Medicine at UBC. A lot of students keep on approaching me, apply, so that's, oh, thank you. I didn't get in yet, but thanks. So when I was voluntold to do this reflection, I had a really difficult time on choosing what to reflect on. Like, what do I reflect on? I reflect on my student life, my past, my culture, but to be honest, I really want to reflect on my time at this conference. This is my first time attending something like this, and I could not have anticipated the experience I've had this week. At the pre-conference, being able to sit at the table with medical experts and solve community health concerns and learning how to engage with communities is something I thought I could never do. Yet here I am, doing what I thought was impossible. And the day after, I'm talking to other health professionals and experts from South Africa, Australia, Jerusalem, and I've learned so much about our world, and honestly, it's very, very small, and the concerns we share are all very connected. We all have similar concerns for our people, and we all can agree on how to help them, and again, that's the essence of this conference. And that's the beauty of TUFH. It's the connections, the collaborations, and the networks that we bridge together is what makes us, makes all of you here amazing. And I've been very honored to be here. And then the next day, I'm presenting on behalf of the BC Métis Federation and our health concerns affecting our communities across BC. And again, the support for our cause and the work we've been doing is just overwhelmingly positive. If I told myself I would be up here presenting at this conference, being in front of all of, again, you amazing people, I would tell myself, you're crazy. You're like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you definitely would not be here right now. But here I am, again. And now, I have the honor to speak again in front of all of you, and for all those who have advocated for people like myself. My uncle in the back, Kevin Henry, is also here, and other Indigenous communities across Canada. So again, thank you. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart. So, changing gears, I'm here to introduce Sean and Heather Alio on the topic of compassionate leadership. And compassion, I love that this is kind of one of the tie-ins to the end of the conference. That's one word I would use to describe this conference, is compassion. And compassion is something I want to really continue and carry into my theoretical medical practice in the future. So a bit about Sean and Heather Alio. So together, Sean and Heather are also partners in life and work. They engage in full cooperative leadership in a variety of intersecting streams, including education, business, and politics, while always connecting in mental and emotional health and well-being. They provide compassionate leadership, coaching, and training through the Compassionate Leadership Institute. The work is founded on Indigenous philosophy and worldviews, as well as mainstream advancements in the area of child development, nonviolent communication, empathy, and the neurosciences of mental and emotional development. They also work in advance with First Nations reconciliation. They serve as co-chairs with the National Government Chiefs Council in the implementation of their 2014 Supreme Court Aboriginal title case win. It's a long sentence. Sean and Heather continue to strive to develop compassionate approaches and strategies to build strong and meaningful partnerships that support, respect, understand, and empower First Nations and other nations constructively to disrupt systems that do not fully recognize or see each other. Heather Alio is of mixed settler and Blackfoot ancestry and is an experienced leader in the area of conflict resolution, negotiation, meditation, senior strategic analyst, and facilitation working with First Nations leaders, academic institutions, and nonprofit organizations. Also federal provincial leadership at the Prime Minister and Minister level, and industry CEOs. That's a long list, my goodness. She's an extensive background in transformative leadership and change management, strategic partnerships, engagement communications, and policy analysis and development. Heather has spent the majority of the last 20 years in the political environment supporting and working with First Nations and First Nations locally, regionally, provincially, and nationally, and has supported successful negotiations of large-scale agreements. She is also extremely passionate and decades of expertise in the area of health, wellness, and leadership and mental health advocacy. Sean Atleo brings 30 years of leadership experience, including elected leadership. Sean is Hereditary Chief of the Howsett First Nation and former twice-elected National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. He was elected in 2009 and then re-elected in 2012. The National Chief is elected by over 633 First Nations from across Canada and serves as the leading advocate representing First Nations in Canada and globally. Sean held this role through serving back-to-back term for the 203 First Nations elections in BC as Regional Chief in 2003, and in then 2006, it was brought to this role that he helped found the BC First Nations Leadership Council, which brought together the First Nations Leadership Organization to work together. Sean has 2 wonderful grown kids, and Sean and Heather are parents of 3 wonderful girls and a baby boy in Squamish, BC. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean and Heather.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Drake. And one on the way. Due in December. Yeah. So, and Drake is also son of a really good friend of ours. And that makes this particularly special. Thanks for that both generous introduction, and truly you've inspired him on the path to becoming a physician. And you heard him say he's not accepted yet. But a decision was made this week. There's some giggles back there. So let's all send the good vibes, and we want good people like you. And cha-chamara, chu cha-chamara, wa? Tikshasi hat way hexu, musquium, squamish sail with tu. Cha-chamara in our language, the healers. Wasik Dave, Wick. Healers, doctors. We recognize the chiefs of this territory. You've got Wade at the back, Musqueam, Chair, Tai Hutwit, First Nations Health Council, good friend, welcoming us here to his territories, sitting with other Tai Hutwit, Eha, Doug Kelly, James, Stallo territories, sitting next to the other Hutwit, Ray Markham, RCC. We're really honored to be here. Sit yak sa apwaik. Oh, ish. Ya akchamataksa. Ya akchamataksa makes harmony through love. The name Heather Marie carries. Tatuz'i. Tatuz'i, our little girl, she's here. As you well know, as physicians at around 20 weeks, she can hear us. In our language, we do makul tutla, she carries her first name. As soon as mom feels the flutters, the family's welcomed in, we go to the elders for her name. Ooh, be gentle and kind to mom and to baby. If the voice starts to raise, let's take a breath and bring it back down. It's a really important time of development for a baby, and it's the moment when the family gets involved. So we do ceremony, makul tutla. We're sharing this with you because baby's got her first name in womb, and she'll get her second one when we have a successful and safe, when mom delivers baby, sharing a little bit about what a special moment this is. And we only want baby and mom around gentle and encouraging and positive and light. And so we work to regulate how it is that we feel. My name, Aapweek, was held by my late grandfather. It means says the right thing, which I'm still working on to this day, to say the right thing. And it's the 7th name that I've carried. Ahosetish. We come from the village of Ahouset off of the west coast of Vancouver Island. When I was a little boy, it was a village of 250, fishing village, only accessible by boat or by air. I come from Atliustakum. I come from the Atleo bunch, and we come from a long line of whalers in the course of our history. We still whale, but we take people out in boats to go take pictures of them. We don't treat them any different than the rest of the world treats whales for the most part. We wanted to share in this next 25 minutes where we've come from, a little bit of our journey, right? We wanted to begin with sharing about the new life that's coming and how it reflects the shifts and the patterns that we've been aspiring and are working on in our lives today and the journeys that we've come from. And we live in the beautiful Squamish territories. We approached the chiefs and we said we want to settle there. We want to establish a center for compassionate leadership. For the last 10 years, we've both shifted out of a life of advocacy that took us around the world, that took us into the halls of power, that saw us in our villages and the communities and places like the inner cities, places like Vancouver, supporting the advocacy for Indigenous peoples and for land rights, for rights of recognition around the world. That culminated in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which was really a global effort. So for my part, what I wanted to share about our work and our journey is really building off your gathering here today as Chachamara, as healers. Coming from different parts of the world, coming from your own perspectives, your own contexts, deriving a vision that is now setting forth what it is that you are dreaming to occur over the next 10 years. And that's really exciting. You take a moment to look back, you take a moment to pause and reflect here on this campus at this juncture in your own personal history, the history of this work, of this profession, of this field that connects with so many other aspects. What's inspired us has really been spending so much time out in the world and then saying, we want to spend time now on the internal world and being astounded at the new plateaus that we would be experiencing. After new plateau, after new plateau. It's like the age of enlightenment when they says, I think we've come to the end of knowledge. That's it. Oh, there's still so much to learn. And same thing with that. Teach ma, the work of the heart, the work of learning our internal world. So we've been inspired by our teachings. You're hearing our language. Be kind to each other. But how to be kind? Especially when I'm not feeling like it. How to be kind. Respect each other. But how can I be respectful when the values seem to be so different and we disagree? Oh, it's always possible to be kind. People like the Dalai Lama would say, be kind whenever possible and it's always possible. Well, how does a person like that access their emotions so easily? Interested and curious. I don't know how to do that. I feel good today or bad today. And my third one is an excuse. I feel tired if I can't figure out what the other emotion is that I might be feeling. As Drake was sharing in the introduction, the fields of neuroscience, oh my goodness, thank you. All those neuroscientists saying that it's possible to learn at whatever age and to change patterns, to wake up, because isn't it better to know? And once you know, how exciting is it? And then you have to do something about it. You got to gather in Vancouver for a week, and then you have to form a new vision for 10 years. And then you're reinvigorated to get back out there. And you're going to inspire a young doctor to say, I'm going to pick this up too. It's my turn. Here I come. And it's really difficult to regulate ourselves if we don't know what's going on. So the work of Doug Knoll and Marshall Rosenberg, experts in the fields of compassionate, nonviolent communication, have inspired us, right? To be alive to the spirit of one another. And these are individuals that we really admire and respect their teachings, to validate each other into existence. I said to my relative Dave Frank, who brushed some of you off, he's from my village. Is that you? I haven't seen him in 2 years. It's me. Is that you? He says. Yeah, that's me. That's me. I'm happy to see you. And I know some of you from your villages, from your home context, will know that sensation of seeing one another, of truly seeing each other. And so ceremony has been brought here from my own village. My heart is full of joy. I feel warm-hearted right now thinking that you had an opportunity to have somebody from my teachings we shared this language, and who was part of the people who raised me and who taught me. And we've learned so much from the work of others that we really admire. So Doug Knoll's work on validation, validate each other into existence. Oh, you don't need to feel that way. Oh, Drake, don't feel that way. What are you feeling that way for? we've all heard sentiments like that. Oh, you're feeling scared. That's okay. Okay. And we just be with one another in those sensations. And we can do this for ourselves. So I was inspired, and we were inspired. I was inspired by the story of a leader, really, I think, from biblical times. I think this comes from the references from that time in human history, of the leader who said, to all the advisors, my people are not healthy, what must I do? The first advisor says, if this was in my village, we got to build a skateboard park. That's going to be it. Got to build a skateboard park. That's going to do the job. The next one comes along and says, we need to have clean drinking water. I don't know if the indigenous leadership recognized that one. So we have clean drinking water. It's going to fix things up. And the next advisor comes along with the next fix, and then the last advisor says to the leader, for your people to be healthy, you need to be healthy. And we started that journey together. Heather Marie says we're heading into the age of emotion. She said, we believe that a better world is possible by becoming aware of ourselves. That's the journey that we've been on. 40,000 hours of practice that we've been inspired by these individuals, and we decided to practice it at the most difficult level, intimate level. The place where we can get most easily triggered, where we can get most easily activated, and it's the highest standard of practice. So that's the reason why I love, my top priority is to be a good friend and husband, a good daddy. Everything flows from that for us. And so we're out to change, to encourage change, to inspire curiosity about the way in which we engage with each other through our work. And we're so honored, Ray. Thank you for inviting us into the circle of physicians here in BC. Thanks, Dougie, for inviting me to consider stepping into roles like leadership roles in the past. We've been honored to be on this journey as friends because we've been at this for a long time. So I hope that helps to introduce a little bit to that we're situated in Squamish. We got a vibrant, bustling household. We're also homeschoolers. Like we love to be at home with our kids doing that as well. And we love doing this work in the realm of what we refer to as compassionate leadership. So maybe, Heather Marie, you can pick it up from there and share a little bit more.
We were threatening to banter, but when we heard 30 minutes, it gets a little, it goes by too quick. So really Sean's helped situate how we've come to be with you and how we found ourselves in this room, in this moment, with such inspiring and invigorating and compelling conversation. And I really thanked Dr. Bob and an elder, a wise elder. And we don't use the term elder lightly. It comes with so much of experience and wisdom and grace and stepping softly for facilitating the declaration and humility that we saw was put together. And I thanked him because I said we needed to have a keynote. And so thank you to each of you for contributing. And I think it touches on in us coming into harmony, how to have harmony in healthcare and how to have harmony in health. Sean introduced the name that I've been given, bestowed, and now given the responsibility to grow into and uphold, which is Ya'ak Chamataksa. And it means brings harmony through love. But Ya'ak in our language is the same for pain and love. And so it's encouraging harmony through love, knowing all the pain that is wrapped when you love. Because to love means to be open, and to love means to be exposed with your whole heart soft. And any of us who've been through trauma, through pain and loss and grief and heartache, we know that it's wrapped with love, and it's not easy. And seeing your declaration about to discover, to dream, to design, to deliver, and thinking about what we have now charted off to, which is to inspire curiosity. And I saw a great flyer downstairs when we came up, and it says, behind every dream is a story. And looking through your declaration about how do we transform, how do we find harmony, we need to hear each other's stories. And so when Sean says he ran into Elder Dave, and he says, so, wow, is that you? And Grand Chief Doug Kelly laughs every time we talk to him on the phone. He's a brother. And Sean says every time, so, wow, is that you, Doug? And you have to, because it says, I see you, and I see you, Victoria, and I see you. And it's beyond just greeting. It's beyond. And when I see what you've scoped out for, when you've looked back 10 years about where you've been, to get that integrated, cohesive narrative that brings the stories together, that looks back not in rumination, but in true reflection, to say, how did we get to right here? And how do we have a path forward in such an era of tumult Sean says to me when he says, what is the title of our presentation? I says, I
said that just a few minutes
I said, I don't think we gave one. I said, it's 10 cups of tea in a tumultuous era.
I think somebody here gave
So thank you, Bob, for putting that gem, or facilitating that gem landing in your declaration about 10 cups of tea.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about systems and partnerships and community, and where we believe compassion comes in, and compassionate leadership for us. And there's so many beautiful ways to describe compassionate leadership. And the basic tenets is relationality. And the value that we say, you can come with all your own values, your own teachings, your beliefs, your wisdom, your experience. But the value that we ask to get considered and curious about is that we're all related, and that we're all related to one another, and that relationality, and the ability to see one another. And how do we do that? Because when we read through that, where you want to be in 10 years, and how to co-create, how to collaborate, how to build those relationships, how to have community-based and community-driven information and pathways. How do we listen to one another? How do we see one another? How do we is that you? Where we're alive to our whole beings, and we do it gently. And when we sit down and we say we go slow to go fast, because in our teachings, we have to know one another. How can we solve a problem if I don't truly understand? And I threatened to Doug that we'd weave in one of his comments, but he says it does. It takes one person to have change. Only one person. And then we need each other. And so we take one person who inspires one more person who inspires another. And why can't we do it in a quick way? Why can't it be? And then we go slow to go fast. Because when we have 10 cups of tea, we get to truly understand what it is and see one another, to hear what it is about how it is that we need to forge these paths. Systems are people, and Ray says that. Dr. Ray helps talk to Sean about and remind us about systems are made up of people. We are the system. I am the system. And if I'm the system, what responsibility do I carry? And the idea of individuality is not the same as individualism. When I know who I am, I can see you for who you are. And when I know what I like and dislike, I can be alive to what you like and dislike. When I understand the pain that I carry and the hurts that I carry, I can tend them, I can reach out, others can come, and I can stop hurting because I can stop hurting others because I hurt. And it's not an easy journey. We've been on, as Sean shared, 10 years in combative and violent advocacy and activism to change the world. And then we got weary.
Don't you get weary?
And we went to, I always talk about a defining moment. Sean likes me telling this story.
Tell that story.
About being at the Walk for Reconciliation, which is about Indigenous reconciliation. And 70,000 Vancouverites, British Columbians, people from around Canada came together with Indigenous leaders and community members to talk about reconciliation. And Dr. Bernice King, the daughter of late Martin Luther King, was there, and she was orating and doing this beautiful, and she lost her place in her script. And
I think it was windy.
It was blustery, windy, rainy. Wade, who stepped out from it, probably remembers that, but it was really wet and really rainy, perfect Vancouver day. And she just drew on her heartfelt contributions of what it had been like being in civil rights movements, growing up in that family. And she says, you know, don't you get weary, because you will get weary. And Sean was on stage, I was on the side, and we both listened, and we thought, we're weary. And she says, don't you get weary, because you're going to get weary. And don't get weary, because you will get weary. And it's like getting that big ah ha ha. And in our teachings, we reach over and say ah ha 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 ha. Like when our hearts get sore, don't worry about it, it's going to get better. Wouldn't you like to come out of a moment and you can say, oh, that hurt. And you have your colleague, your friend, your boss, your sister, your mother, somebody comes over with non-judgment and says, ah ha ha. Even when you made the mistake, ah ha ha. To be seen, to be felt, to be heard. And so we thought about this. She tells a story about two, and it was a biblical story that I probably wouldn't have heard otherwise. And telling on what she knew is Dr. Bernice King. And she says, you know, there's two tables starving, and they've got these 30-foot-long spoons. And they're starving. They're trying to feed themselves. And they can't get the food in their mouths with these spoons. And she says, and then it was announced, you've got to reach over and feed one another. Well, that moment in 2013, I think, was kind of a pivotal turning moment. And we left the political work, we left the activism work, and we decided to do an inward journey, and which turned into an outward journey, which is about how do we bring that kindness? How do we connect before content? How do we Add no more harm. How do we have nonviolent resilience, meaning good boundaries, knowing it's not about stepping in more and getting hurt more? How do we keep that heart soft and still be ferocious? How do we be with one another? How do we take the time for 10 cups of tea so that we go slow to go fast? And then the bigger question that we've been trying to work on is, what do you do when you're having 10 cups of tea and you don't agree? And it's getting harder, and it's really hard to sit for 10 cups of tea with someone that you just cannot understand how it is that they've gotten to that spot where they're so either hurt that they're angry, or they're coming from such a different perspective, or that it's going against our core values. How do we have 10 cups of tea in that moment? Do we have 10 cups of tea? And so we go slow to go fast. How do we stay alive to one another? How do we validate each other into existence, especially when we don't agree? How do we understand when we don't agree? How do we do it with kindness? How do we breathe kindness back into kindness, where it's not about suppressing or complacency, and where we're kind because being kind, I want to add to your wellness and well-being. And when I can't, it means that something's blocking my own empathy, and I need an ah-ha-ha. And you can build from there and close us out.
You can hear Heather Marie's, I think, excitement and pride, because we set out a dream board, and we're here, and the dream. So now we're needing to refresh the dream board, just like you're doing in this work. And so she would always say, you have to believe it to see it. You start with that belief, and so that sentiment of intentionality. So a decade ago, I was prototypical. I was at the podiums. I got to make them understand. And our 10-year-old's got an old T-shirt from one of my campaigns, and on the back, it's I think it was intended to mimic the Obama-esque type of, on the back it says change, and my face is like this, and she says, "Daddy, that's the grumpy one on the back, and the one on the front, it says hope." And I got a big smile, and I'm like that. And I was aspiring to understand how it was that I felt scared. Why is it that I felt so anxious all the time? Why couldn't I sleep? Why would I have bouts of depression, which is internalized anger? And so that's been the journey. It's primarily been about our own internal world, and about how to be kind to self first, because that's the journey to being kind to others. How to be gentle to others, to be gentle to self first. How to express anger in a healthy, constructive way versus a toxic way. I think toxic was another word that was anchored in your dream. So to understand these is the first step of the journey. And I'm here to tell you, it's difficult. It's difficult to do. Thankfully, the neuroscientist says if you practice, and we have, because I think it's all about the math, we got a board, and so we're tracking this. So we've developed our own system to practice every single day, because I want to be alive to what it is that everyone says, but I want to treat my partner in life the way I treat so many other people that I don't know. The experts like Doug Dahl says, we're only going to get to know 2 to 5% of each other. And when I was deciding to be as good at being a daddy and a husband as I was at being, pick the topic. Maybe giving a speech. Yeah, I'd think, okay, pretty good. I come from an era of orators, though. Soccer, top of the field. Even with my height, fast, super fast. So I asked, so how should I do this? Should I go up the mountain like my late grandpa did before he went whale hunting? Should I go and do this or that, the other thing? And he told me, and I followed his advice, because we went to him, because he was a person who was relied on as an expert around the world. He says, we know very little about the power relationship in my field. We know very little about the power. Hold her hand. I am let go. I'm not going to let go. He said, we only use, even in intimate relationships, a small percentage of our relationships. Strive to use over 90%. I tell you, most days we're hitting 99%. And at 1%, maybe I end up barking like a California sea lion that's traveling up the coast. That's the old systems. Comes up in the body. All of a sudden, the voice is louder and it's sharper than I want it to be to treat my loved one. Or we treat somebody else in a way that is louder or sharper than we maybe intend. And then misunderstandings, we don't take the time, not only for the 10 cups of tea, but to practice how to facilitate closeness and attunement with self and with others. As Heather Marie says, to be alive to the spirit of the other, to strive to make their world well and happy. Marshall Rosenberg, who sometimes we think of as not necessarily the most nonviolent communicator, who taught nonviolent communication. He says, even in the worst case scenario, hostage taking, you still have to understand the needs of the hostage taker to get through that situation. And it's a good reminder. Here we're talking about relationships and systems. And so when Ray said we are the system and we're looking for leaders who are prepared to step forward and say, I think, people, that we need to go this way. What do you think? And that's what Ray did. And so we're right there, shoulder to shoulder with leaders who say it starts with ourselves. And so that's a little bit of our story. And it's inspired for us, the story of my late grandmother, who Heather Marie says, remember about your late granny, what she said. It reminds us of your moment here. You can't see your own faces, except on Zoom, but you can't right now. You can't see your own back. Even on Zoom, you can't see your own back. We need each other. Like Heather Marie's story about what Bernice King reminded us. And so we decided that we would practice this because all of these experts were individuals, and we were looking around, where's their partner? You know, how are they work? Like, how does this work? I wanted to know how, because I'm like a lot of you, I'm curious. Tell me how to be kind to myself and to others. And not to do it so that nice doesn't cut it. I'm talking genuineness, so that you know that what's happening here is genuine and authentic. That's what we're striving for. My late grandmother said, as I held her hand in the House of Commons, 2008, when Canada's Prime Minister was apologizing to her for having taken 17 kids and sent them off to residential school against her will, that caused the kinds of deep intergenerational trauma that today that we're working on in our family life, that our baby is going to feel the shift in the pattern because we took the time to do it ourselves, focus inwardly. And she, with great ferocity as gentleness at the same time, and she was tinier than me, way more powerful when I think about that moment. She says, grandson, they're just beginning to see us. They're just beginning to see us. Like, she was excited. Oh, I had a vision. I had this great big heavy book. It was weighing us down. And I couldn't turn it, grandson. It's because it's going to take all of us to turn that page, that heavy page in that dark chapter. But we can do it, she said. I can still feel her sense of optimism and hope and the pain that she'd experienced in her lifetime. And then when she left us later that year, she says, I'm contented, grandson. I know that the future is going to be bright. And she left me with that sensation of hope. And Heather Marie, 10 years ago now, expressed that sentiment about this being the age of emotion. And don't rely on us. Places like Harvard will tell you that for senior leaders, if you leave the emotional side out, you're leaving over 90% of hard data in our relationships. Everything from HR to how to form relationships, to how to network and how to break down silos begins with understanding and being seized with learning the needs of the other. And without compromising yourself, know your own needs. Stand up for yourself to know your own needs and express them in a way that will allow them to be heard and understood, so those needs get met. And it's more than just equality and equity. This is where we can really begin to see the inequities that have occurred. We can, as Heather Marie says, we can say, that's not what we want. And we can set about to make the changes that we aspire. And we can do it in a way where we add no harm. We make each other great and good. We don't allow things to continue if we see that there's issues that need to be dealt with. Because once we know, we want to do something about it. And so we've joined Ray and the physicians here in British Columbia on just such a journey. And we're excited because, Chachamara, what you've done for us, especially in the last couple of years, is you've kept us. You put us on your back and said, we're going to get through this moment. And we know that you're still doing it because you've sent people like Drake off to school to get his education, because you've said we see a good, kind, big, compassionate heart there. And yeah, the skills are important, but Bob will tell you, you can train for the skills, right, Bob? You can train for the skills. You want the people who are going to bring their whole hearts to this work. And that's what we see, and that's why we feel so invigorated. Aww. So I don't know if there's anything else, Heather Marie.
There's always so much.
And I think maybe with that,
Just gratitude.
Just gratitude. So you want to finish then with expressing gratitude for us?
Yeah, I think just to have this opportunity to join you, to hear your words, to read your thoughts, to hear that commitment, to see it spelled out as commitments with intentionality, to think about 10 years forward. And with every dream comes a story, and I will instantly cry, and it's not being pregnant. But just to think about all the stories that sit in this room and all the wisdom, and back to where Doug took us just an hour ago about one person can make a difference. And I see that collective declaration coming forward. And the beauty of within it is that idea to have this dream for 10 years from now, all the stories that need to be heard, all the systems. What's our responsibility to each other? Not for each other, but to each other. How do we have good boundaries? So if that 10 cups of tea isn't going okay, how do we do it with kindness, but with healthy boundaries? So we can say, okay, I'm not going to add harm here, and I'm also not going to be harming myself by being in this moment. So where to from there? And really diving into the how. How do we co-create? How do we collaborate? Because when it's easy, it's easy. And that's what we say about compassionate leadership, is that when it's easy, it's easy. And when it's hard, it's really hard. When we, for whatever reason, can't become alive because something's about power or inequities or oppression or violence, and it's really hard to get alive to that, because that's how wars start. That's how so many pieces, and how do we practice nonviolent resilience where we don't add more harm and we don't compromise. And it's not an easy journey. And so we raise our hands, we say in our language, we say kleko.
We say chu, tleko, chu, aona, short speech. Truly a short speech in our culture.
So kleko, kleko.
Kleko.
And then we say aha, because it's going to be hard.
Yeah, it's
So
difficult.
Is on? Perfect. Thank you, Sean Heather, so much for your time today and for making your speech all about me. So thank you. It was so engaging, and I honestly had kind of had a hard time not tearing up a little bit because it was very emotional. Thank you for being here. Does anyone have any questions? Opening up the floor. Put your hand up. Questions? Oh.
Hi, Sean. I don't have a question. I'm just humbly touched and moved by the two of you. I missed some because I was visiting with my other friend, Dave. Oh. I don't know if you remember, Sean, 2008, this girl came into a house to your community, and I was asked to come to help with the suicide of the youth and all of that. Dave was the first person that I met. And I said to him now, and you just sat there, no tea. He just sat there and he looked at me, what do you want? What do you want to do in my community? Why, And he kept on asking those questions, And so it's like, as I just told Dave, it's like full circle, full circle, because like your grandmother, we are doing it. Look at you. Look at you. And I don't think that words can really express what I have experienced and what I have seen in terms of your wisdom, in terms of your courage, in terms of your authenticity. So thank you. Kleko for your gifts.
Kleko.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from the floor? No? Do you have any questions online?
Yes, we have a question online asking about how to overcome self-interest that will destroy the goodwill of understanding towards others.
What was the first part?
Self-interest?
How to overcome self-interest that will destroy the goodwill of understanding towards others.
Are you referring to sort of the sentiments about ego and?
It's not my question, but I will assume that's where it's
Okay.
framed around.
Yeah, why don't you start?
I think it touches back on, and not knowing the full context of the question, I think it touches back on when we lead compassionately, there's really no room to breathe for self-interest only. Because the whole nature of the teaching is that we,
you show.
and the oneness.
Oh, yeah. I
had a brain blank. I couldn't think of the term, but sawakness, which is the idea that we're all one and interconnected. And when you have that as a teaching, as a pillar of relationality, self-interest can't exist on its own. It has to be within a context of relationship. And so when I spoke about individuality and that idea that we do need reflection, we need to know ourselves, we need others to help us reflect to ourselves who we are as a group, as an organization. We need to know who we are. We need to know who we are as a community. We need to know who we are as a family and the multiple stories that shape that, and as an individual, which is different than individualism that says, I'm going to meet my needs over someone else's needs. Because once we're alive to that in ourselves, we can then be alive and say, I can see you. And so we need to understand each other's interests, because otherwise we're suppressing and it's going to come out. If one of us has an interest that we don't express fully, it comes out passively in other ways. And so we don't be ashamed that we have needs, but we be mindful how we express those.
And we be self-reflective. And this is probably a good way, to begin thinking about going home to your home contexts. When we do our work with leaders, or when we're spending time with coaching or training, we use simple tools, because I want it simple, because I need simple. Tell me how to do this. So we use simple things like sift and rain. When I'm thinking about things like the question about self-interest, what are the sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts that I'm having when I'm interacting? You can do that right now. You can sift through them. What are the sensations? Maybe you've been sitting a long time. Maybe what are the images? Maybe it's the lineup at the airport. What are the feelings? Is it fatigue, happiness, sadness, joy? What are the thoughts? Thoughts are the trickiest. You got to really look at those thoughts. I know mine don't always tell the truth. I'll leave it up to you to decide what your thoughts do. But some of my thoughts lie. I got to keep an eye on thoughts. I'm decently smart. I was partly educated here at UBC. They produce people who know how to think. But RAIN is the second most important part, the acronym RAIN. Recognize them. So take a spot on the ceiling right now and look down at yourself. And then just accept. So be accepting. Just soften into it, like Heather Marie says. Oh. But then be curious, investigate. So we want to inspire curious. Where did that come from? Did something flash in your mind? Was it a memory from this week? Or maybe it was something from when you were a UBC student 40 years ago or 30 years ago. I know I was running the Boulevard 55 years ago. And then the last one is really important as well, non-attachment. So in other words, we practice non-judgment. We be accepting. And the reason for that is there might be some biases that we'll discover. There might be some judgments we're making towards ourselves or others. And we just soften into them. Now we get to use our discernment, is the way that Heather and me would respond to a question about how do we address the issue of self-interest. And as Heather Marie says, this is where we decide. This is where we decide if we want to approach our work and our life in a way that truly is seized, even if we don't agree with each other, with what your needs are. Now, I want to make your life better. I want to contribute to your well-being and your happiness. Takes the time to really understand what your needs are. And I'll ask you what your needs are, and then I'll ask for clarification. Oh, it could be tough. It could be tough because we might not agree. And so we think that this is one of the major issues about even why conflicts have occurred in the course of history and Indigenous state relations, is taking that time. And the reason why we loved your 10 cups of tea is because 10 cups of tea and then the how. And we come from so many cultures and backgrounds that people like Gordon Neufeld believe we've got unconscious competencies about how to do this work. And we just needed to bring it to the surface. It's there in our language. It's there in your languages too. It's there in your background. Our peoples knew how to do this work. the idea of the attachment theory that Neufeld we've extrapolated. We really believe there's powerful aspects to that concept that is there in our societies as New Jonathan house it and around the world. And how do we apply that in our world of work? To be seized with one another, to strive to know more than 2 to 5% of each other. And we're both suffering with a little bit of asthma, which gives us a little hint that it's not Cuvade. I'm not going to say that it's Cuvade. But I just did.
Pregnancy, asthma, and in COVID times, it's not a good.
And I just did out loud.
Thank you so much.
See, that's what happens with thoughts. Be careful. So hopefully that supports some reflection and encourages curiosity, because what we can hear in that question is a little bit of maybe fear. When what Doug Knoll says is that anytime anyone's talking, or even if they're not talking, if you're engaged with them, listen for the emotions. Listen beyond the words. Depending on your relationship, you can also ask to test them. You've got to be careful about that. But all of us speak in a way that tells each other what our emotions are. And we're trained to focus on the words. Remember what they said. And so what we've had to relearn, thankfully, and it's so difficult to do, is to listen for the emotions. Oh, okay, I'm hearing the words. It's easiest when we talk about our kids. I hate you, child will say, because they're not getting the ice cream on the time frame and the quickness with, I hate you. And in an unconditional love relationship, that can occur because you can't break that love ever. That love will not be broken. They can test you and test you and test you because that's their job on the path to maturation. When we're older, it's more difficult. We have to think about what we say and how we say that, because relationships at different levels will be conditional and they can be broken. So hopefully that helps. The online question, you can tell it opens up a whole sphere, but this is our work, and I know we're probably at the time to close this out. We're really excited about embarking on this path in a structured way with RCCBC. And we chose RCCBC, or they chose us, in part because it's in small town. We come from small towns. We're small town people. You know what it's like to walk through a village? You can't walk through a village like this. You got to walk through a village like this. Oh, hey, how are you? What's the news for today? I think we're going to get rain. What's going on with Auntie? Oh, yeah. 2 hours later, you're at your final destination. 10 cups of tea, folks. You hit it nail on the head. Go slow to go fast. You heard it here. The age of emotion has arrived because Heather Marie told me it would. And I believe her. Every time she does this, she doesn't just get a parking spot. And that's what you just did with your 10-year plan. And we want to be on the journey with you.
Yeah.
What?
There's one more question.
One more question?
One more question.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Priyanka. I'm first standing here because to just show my gratitude. As you mentioned now, like we are the small town people, right? I'm in the same category with you. It's like emotions are flowing because I'm resonating with the energy with you. We are in the same frequency right now. I have a question. So far in the life, I found you divine. I'm a very spiritual person. I'm from the Hindu religion, and we practice meditations and connecting with our higher self. I have a question that in your lifetime so far, whatever you experienced with the humans, so how many humans you find in the people around you? Did you understand the question?
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's check.
Because
We'll check if we understand. Yeah.
for me, it's rare.
Oh.
I'm with people here, like it's like full crowd, right? But it's rare to find humans in people. I mean, of course we are living, but I know you get it. I can't explain it, but because as I told that the emotions came, I was resonating with the same energy, and I'm a person to recognize the aura of I'm not so old. I haven't experienced life that much, but I know that what I carry inside of me and what me to me is having the connection. And I found you the people of my category, and it just made me ask, this question that I just want to ask, because this is a question that nobody has the answer. I try to find the answers many times, but I know that the answers are also inside of me. So it's just my research, not research, it's just I'm just search of humans. And humans are not there, unfortunately.
So what we would say is what you're sharing, the experience is an ashtakyu, having an ashtakyu. When you have that moment, and we're in nature, if you think of when hummingbird comes to visit you, or you have that moment of bear, and you have what we call as an encounter. And it's at a level that we can't describe or explain. And we believe we can do it as humans. We can have an ashtakyu, where we connect, where we have a moment or an encounter, where we really see one another. And we can't describe it with words. And it's not about something that we can articulate. And we don't have a word in English that we found to describe it, but it's what Dave does when he brushes you off. He sees your whole klimaksti, your whole, it's the closest word I can think of in English is your whole spirit. And you described it as the humanity. And in our teachings, we say everything's connected. We're all one. The trees, so we approach the trees. We treat them as they want to be treated, but we can't know how they want to be. We can try to think, but we have to spend time together. And so rather than that old adage, treat each other as we wish to be treated, we strive to treat each other as you want to be treated. And I treat myself how I want to be treated. And when we get to know each other, we can do that. And I think that question is a hard one because it's to acknowledge the pain. And I have a lot of hope for humanity. We believe that this is a beautiful convening of nature in this room.
Yeah.
And to reconnect to us being part of nature. Yeah. We are nature. The birds, the trees, the humans, we are all one. And so to come back to the celebration of nature, which is in this room, we're having ushtakyu moments. You talked about your moment, an ushtakyu. You see Dave and you see Sean after 2008, and how does that work? Where does that come from? And how do we describe it, whether it's from your teachings and your spirituality and your beliefs? And we would say that what we've been transformed, and I think absolutely seized by, is when we started working into a more compassionate way. Oh, the humanity and humans that we started seeing and encouraging and inspiring it. And we had to change because we were pretty closed and hard, and we didn't trust.
Lone wolves.
We were lone wolves, and we'd had enough experience and heartache and worked in enough oppression and suicides, having too many community members released back to us after a
Looking
suicide
to win
watch.
an argument, make a point.
And so we changed. And we've been inspired with the humanity, how to unlock the hardness. And it's not there everywhere, but as Sean spoke about neural pathways, whether we come at it from a spiritual element, whether we come at it from a neural pathway, however we come at it, we can see change. And we'll carry a few along, so we believe it till we see it, because I really do hope that we can get to that spot where we're seeing and the humanity and the authenticity is coming out in each one of us, because it's in each one of us. It's just how many layers have we had of hurt and different teachings that have created those walls and prevented us from seeing one another.
Because we had those walls, we know that others have them. The experts confirm that, not us. And so the practice is one of listening beyond the expressions that are occurring, and to hear the hurt that might be there, the anger, anxiety, and for me, shame, toxic shame, scared mad, injuring primarily myself, issues around self-worth. Self-esteem, very high, good at this, good at that. Self-worth, low, very, very dangerous, particularly if you move, and makes for good fodder for leadership, by the way. Didn't lose an election. Not so sure that that's the way that our systems should be set up that way. So to hear the humanity beyond the words means to be able to be really seized with the humanity, because this is the most beautiful expression of nature. Like grandfathers say, watch the birds, they'll teach you about life. You know how they have a squabble, they're going along.
And you were called a duck.
And I was called a duck earlier today. He says, if it quacks like a duck, that's what my brothers called me today. Birds are the highest order. Boy, my elders say, watch the birds. You know the way they're on the pond and they're fighting? And then they're like that. How do they do that? And what are they doing? It's so interesting. And so when we get into challenges with both our judgment about the way others are or the way others are, we're not at peace. It hurts and it's painful. And just to be there with that
And
pain.
to tend those hurts.
Tend it. So the work of compassionate leadership starts with self first. And then it begins with others. And doing the practice in relationship is the most difficult and the most beautiful. Because isn't that what we're designed to do? No different than the trees are to the river, to the salmon, to the bear, to the air, to the sun, to the moon, to the tides, to the rocks. So that's our take on the world and on the world of the heart and on the matters of the spirit and how far we've come and how to go about accomplishing change. And the biggest, most difficult change in engagement was with self. But the principles are the same when you interact with others. That's what we found. So that gives us a lot of hope. And Drake has just pulled out the hook. So thank you, Drake, for that. So this truly is it. Tleko, tleko.
Tleko.
Thank you very much for your beautiful conclusion. We have gifts here for you, too.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you again very much for coming. And
thank you.
Everyone really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, let's hit it.
That was very emotionally powerful. I don't know about you guys. I feel very, I don't know, a lot of stress feels waved off after kind of like a therapy session. I don't know, it feels really good. Thank you again, Sean and Heather, so much for making your time to come here, and just thank you, from the bottom of all of our hearts, thank you. So this keynote is now over, so if you need to stretch your legs, get a snack. We're having another TUFH talk by Dr. Richard Oden, I believe at 3:30, I think, 3:30? Yeah. So thank you again for all attending this keynote session, and if you have any questions, Sean and Heather are over there. Thank you.